to a military report recently declassified by a Trump administration task force, 7 U.S. service members experienced COVID symptoms after participating in the World Military Games. That was in Wuhan, China, in October of 2019. That's 2 months before China disclosed the virus to the world. Joining us now to talk about all of this is the former CDC director, Dr. Robert Redfield. Dr. Redfield, nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. What was your first reaction when you first heard about this report?
Well, I think it was obviously real, disappointing it wasn't disclosed. I do think the Wuhan military games were probably one of the first major super spreader events of this pandemic. It's interesting that when those games took place in Wuhan, it was very unusual that the Wuhan government didn't allow any spectators.
Interesting.
So it was like having the Olympics, but they allowed no spectators. So they clearly knew there was something going on in Wuhan at the time. And again, I always thought that the military games were probably one of the early spreading events for the pandemic around the world. It's one of the reasons you saw certain countries like Iran that didn't make a lot of sense, that had some of the very early cases. When you look at the participation in the games, Iran was a major participant in those games. And so I do think that this was real. I can't comment having been able to see a lot of the classified data in my day, but I'm glad they're finally declassifying this data.
But Dr. Redfield, if this is true, 7 U.S. service members had early symptoms of COVID in 2019. What does that mean for the whole COVID-19 timeline?
Well, I think it was all wrong. This is why I've always been of the point of view that the pandemic came from the Wuhan lab. It didn't come from spillover. And when you read the natural origin paper, it really needs to be retracted because they act as if the epidemic started in December, January. The epidemic really started probably in August or September timeframe. And again, the games were a big spreading event at the time. So it just reaffirms that the narrative that some people have tried to push, that this came from the wet market in December, January, is a false narrative.
The CIA previously said that all of the theories on COVID origins, and you know this as well as I do, there were many, they preferred the one that it leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China, like you and I just discussed, but there wasn't enough proof. So now that we have all this new information, do you think there was a cover-up, at least when it comes to China?
Well, I think there was no doubt there was not transparency. There was a cover-up. You could also argue about whether there was a cover-up related to some of the U.S. scientists that were promoting the wet market theory, which was not a credible theory. I always said there were plenty of opinions about the wet market, but there was no scientific evidence. And there was a lot of scientific evidence that this epidemic started from a laboratory in Wuhan, China, from gain of function research.
Do you think Dr. Fauci has or ever will come around to the idea that this may have been engineered indeed from a lab?
Well, I think he needs to, and for his own legacy, his own credibility. I mean, he is a scientist. You'll see that the intelligence agencies, the CIA, has changed their analysis. I'm pretty sure that between now and July, all of the intelligence agencies will redefine their analysis, and there'll be unanimity that this virus came from the lab. You saw the National Academy of Science in France just came out almost unanimously and said the origin of this virus was the laboratory in Wuhan. So I think that narrative, which unfortunately the NIH, Fauci was a big part of it, Collins was a big part of it, they created a false narrative. And I think they did that not for their own personal benefit. They did it because they wanted to protect gain of function research, and they didn't want the government regulating science. And so that's really why they did this.